Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory. I'm your host, John Bauer. If you have not tuned into the show before, I'm joined by Dan Lamagna. That is at FF Coach Dan on Twitter. Dan, we're rocking and rolling back on Twitter. We are live for the whole world to see. Usually we've been doing it for the patrons there over in the Patreon and then throwing it out on the podcast feed and on YouTube. But tonight we are throwing this episode out for everybody live. How are you doing tonight?
Doing awesome, man. Coming off a real fun weekend, so it's great to be here on Twitter. You know, my college Georgia Bulldogs now ranked #1 in the country, so I'm absolutely stoked, just thinking maybe this is Georgia's year. And then spend $80, I think it was $80 on Saturday night on that Fury Wilder fight. And I got home late. I came back from a college football game. I'm like, do I want to spend $80? Because I missed the pre-show, and I'm like, this better be worth it. And it was like the fight of a lifetime there. So absolutely love that. And then my Cowboys won again, guys. So I feel like I got some good momentum into talking Dynasty football tonight. Let's do it.
The last fight I bought, I think it was a Tyson fight. So that tells you how long ago it was. It wasn't when he bit Holyfield's ear off, but I think did he fight him again after that? Or Lennox Lewis, maybe? And it doesn't matter. Anyway, we're also joined by Mitch Sorensen. That's at Dino MC. What is going on, Mitch? Another hunting trip in the books?
Got it done. Didn't kill anything, but it's okay. Went out, had a great time, got snowed on. Didn't feel warm for like 3 days afterwards, so that was a little painful. But I wanted to say, Dan, I owe you an apology. I think I was the hardest person on you about Kadarius Toney. I think I constantly made comments about like just never wanting him on a roster ever. But dude, Kadarius Toney can do things on the field that other wide receivers can't do. And those are the wide receivers that I want on my team. I didn't see it in college, but I saw it now. So I went out in 20 different leagues today and tried to trade for him. I only got him on one league, but it was a good effort. But I'll say you were right, man.
Buddy, I appreciate that. You're a better man than me because I came in here like quiet. And if anything, I was, revved up at my boy JB over there who was, busting my chops with Tony. And we're having a theory discussion on our Patreon there. And, the whole film versus analytics conversation. And, JB was all serious, giving, deep from the heart philosophy. And I'm just being a wise guy on the Patreon, probably firing him up. Not intentionally until we realize he's getting fired up. But, man, I was happy about Tony. But I didn't come on the show talking about Tony or Tremble, even though I'm stoked. That was another part of a good DFS and Dynasty weekend.
I said there's nobody that gets me more riled up and that knows how to push my buttons the way that you two do. And Dan, I felt bad right away, but you knew I was a little aggravated when I dropped an F-bomb on you. I was like, oh, I probably should have said that. But you knew you got me right there. And listen, it's been 2 great weeks. All right. But let's give a little bit more time until I take my L there, until I take my analytical L, which I anticipate having to take here shortly. But tonight is not about Tommy Tremble, Kadarius Toney. Tonight, and this came from the Discord, tonight is about what we are doing with our teams if we're a contender. Who are some of the targets that we're looking out, across our leagues, across our dynasty portfolio, and we are looking to acquire players that we might even be looking to move away if we're contending. So potential trade bait that we really think is going to get a return that's going to help push us a little further along to get that championship this year. Now, before we get into some names, something popped into my head today, and it came from the Discord again. A lot of the conversations that we come up with on the show come directly from the Discord. So it's easy content, and I always appreciate that. But we're looking at what to do as a contender. We're 5 weeks in here, 5 games in the books. Hopefully we're sitting at 5-0 or 4-1 or a strong 3-2. But one thing that popped up, and then this happened in a trade discussion for me earlier today, I have somebody else's 2022 first. They are now looking to potentially enter a rebuild. So and they've made it very clear, hey, this is my prime target here.
John, will you please trade me back my pick in the Dynasty Theory original league? Were you thinking of me, or is that another example?
No, but I am going to hang on to that pick because that pick is cool. That's the 101 right there. No, I have the 101.
It could be
with my roster. But they're coming to me and they're asking me, hey, JB, what are you looking at? Add pieces. You have a solid team there. what can I give you to get my pick back? Now, right away in my head, I have the leverage, right? And then we had some trade discussions back and forth, and they even said, listen, I understand you're holding my pick hostage, essentially. And to an extent, I am. But I wanted your thoughts here. Mitch, I want to start with you. If I come back to you, just like Dan did, hey, JB, my team, it's not good. I want to get my pick back. How do you approach that? Because you certainly could benefit, but then if you push it a little too far, then you turn that manager off, and then it's only 5 weeks in, maybe that pick ends up being a little worse than you anticipated. How do you play that trade negotiation?
So for me, this is actually really simple, and I'm upfront with everybody about it. The price is double. So whatever we value a first in the league, the price to get that one is double, because I know if they're wanting to get into a rebuild, that team probably isn't going to be good anyways. So let's say it's the 108, but they want it back because they want to turn that into the 103. Unlike some injury luck, I could get the 103 out of it anyways. So I'm willing, I'll just hold on that pick, give me double, and then I'll give it to you. You know, let's say you have Dalvin Cook on your roster. I have your first. Maybe I have to chip in a really late second, and then I could have Dalvin for, your first, you'll turn it into whatever, and then a late second. That's how I look at all of those when someone wants to get their pick back from me.
Essentially, it came down to me adding to that first for Joe Mixon. And I mean, Mixon as is, what's the value overall compared to a random first? Not much more. And I think a lot of people would prefer the first, especially if they're going to rebuild. So I'm holding out. I hope this gentleman is not listening to this, because then certainly that trade is going to be squashed before we really even got started. Dan, do you kind of follow that same mindset? Or now listen, don't say, oh, I'd actually offer a discount because I have your pick in our listener league. So don't try to do that reverse psychology.
That won't work.
No.
All right, fine. You called me out on that. But I mean, I agree with Mitch. I don't know if double's necessarily the price, but it's more, whether it's a pick or it's a player, it's like the stock market. Hey, what that pick and player was way back when, if it lost value, I don't expect to get what I traded before because it lost value. But that first round pick, as in the one league we were together, of all my teams, that's like definitely on its. I've been rebuilding all this year, just chipping at it in my own way. That pick you got from me is very valuable. It's more now. So I know if I want it back, I'm going to have to pay more. And similarly, like I traded before the season started for Kyle Pitts, first round pick. All right. 2 tight end premium, deep league. It's amazing how many offers I have gotten for Pitts. And I always respond with, like, the offers I'm getting are not what I gave up to get him. And nothing happened that his value went down. Nothing changed. I'm
after
higher
last week.
So right. Well, so like, why, whether it's a Kyle Pitts type or a first round pick, why am I going to give it away for the same, for less? I'm going to really evaluate the team situation. So, JB, you traded for it. Maybe you are willing to move it, but your team situation is not necessarily the same as your team situation was 5 weeks ago. So that has to come into account.
Now that situation, it kind of steers away from my initial point. And when I posed the question and the topic of tonight's show being a contender, I looked at our standings in that listener league. There's 12 teams in that league. The three of us are 12th, 11th, and 10th. Granted, I'm building for the future, so it feels pretty good. I don't know what Dan's building for, but I don't know if it's the future. But wow. Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic though in conversation, because it is something that's going to come up, and I think you have to pay attention once somebody comes to you and they're looking for their pick back. And Mitch, I know you're cutthroat with this, and you talk about double the price.
It's double.
It's like I can't even think of a good analogy here, but you do have to pay attention. You have to keep that in mind, and you have the leverage essentially. And you're making that manager decide, sure, as the manager that has the pick, I could benefit. I could try to get a little bit more, make that push with it, but I'm making you decide how badly do you want this pick. And the further along in the season we go, if I really see your team struggling, that price goes up even more than it was today. Out of spite, out of strategy for one reason or another, there is a change there. But I think it's an interesting topic.
You're
but
not
finally,
you're not a spiteful guy, though. Maybe to Mitch and I, but you're not a spiteful guy, JB. So don't mislead the listeners there. You're definitely a good guy with trades. But it would be insulting to you to come back and offer less when that pick is worth more now.
One thing about being spiteful, I did let a trade negotiation crumble because somebody kept pushing back and wanted a third-round pick added. And that time, out of spite, I said, thank you very much. I'm going to walk away from this. But anyway, I'm not always filled with spite, just sometimes. All right. Top trade targets. You're a contender. Again, this came up in our Dynasty Theory Discord, which is absolutely free. If you are feeling generous, if you want to support us, if you appreciate the content, check out the Dynasty Theory Patreon, $5 a month, $51 for the year. That's a pretty nice little discount. I think it's like 15% off. Anyway, Mitch, you're contending. You're making a push here. Who do you have your eyes on? And then once we go through a few names, I want to add context and what we're paying and even like league settings, roster construction, how that comes into play, because there's so much nuance with every single player and situation. It's not just black or white. Oh, I'm going to do this in every situation. It's never like that. And everybody knows that. So Mitch, what do you got?
So mine is, I think Dan's going to have a couple of other guys I have on the list, so I'm going to lead off with a different one, and it's Dawson.
And we didn't share any of our
That's
lists.
right.
So
I refuse to, because you guys like to steal my notes. I'm convinced of this now, but it's Dawson Knox. Right now, he's third in PPR for tight ends. He's going to be 25. And the thing, I didn't want to pick just old guys, be like, hey, go get Adam Thielen, blah, blah, blah. I want guys that I'm also going to be able to use next season as well. And so he's turning 25 in about a month. The one thing about the Bills is they've actually blown out so many teams that their pass to run ratio is like in the bottom 10 of the league, which means they're running a lot more than what we anticipated. I think that's probably going to even up, because I know the Bills defense is amazing. They're not better than the best team in the league by like double amazing. So I think other teams are going to catch up a little bit, and they're going to have to throw the ball more. They throw the ball more. Dawson Knox is in the situation that we love. We already know that he was being used in the red zone. He was used last year in the red zone when he came back after his injury. They were looking for him. And now we saw it on the game on Sunday night, to where he's the guy catching a 55-yard touchdown, and just looking at that tight end landscape right now, like, I love Hawkinson. I love Kittle. They're not getting used. I mean, that's just how it is. Dawson Knox, no matter what that offense is, he's going to get used. And so for me, when it comes down to what I'm willing to give up, I thought someone like Juju would make a lot of sense, but I don't know if that's enough. So I think the real question for me is going to be, I'm contending. I think I'm going for a championship. Can I give up my first in that league to get Dawson Knox? And this is tight end premium. I'm not doing this in non-premium leagues because it's just a completely different process. But I think I'm going to talk myself into trading my first for Dawson Knox.
Let me before JB, you break down that value, I want to add something to that, Mitch. And I think it's a very interesting pick that you made here. And it's one of them where we all have our strengths in this fantasy game that we play. And sometimes we even second guess our strengths or our own conviction on certain players. And
wait,
Dawson,
really quick. Speaking of spite, I got to throw ego in here. I don't think Mitch has ever second guessed himself. Even when he knows he's dead wrong, I don't think Mitch has ever second guessed himself.
Well, when Mitch is all in, he's all in, Duke Johnson. But when he's in, without a doubt. But Mitch, I like this, and I am going somewhere with this angle here. So Dawson Knox is a guy I really liked in the preseason. And it goes back to watching Buffalo Bill games last year when I just watched how he was kind of breaking free from coverages. Now, he had little problems with some drops, but he flashed. I'm like, this guy, he's kind of on that sleeper fringe list. And I read all these positive reports, like everything you could want to read in the offseason, validated everything I thought going into the year. And then now he's producing, and he's doing it week in and week out. And there's two things that I really want to zero in on. One is, like, did the fantasy community just like label Dawson Knox as a guy that's not worthy of being up there, where like everything we see, know, and study says Mitch in a I keep saying two tight end because I have this one league in my mind, but in a 2.0 premium league, there's nothing that says that's a bad deal. Like, I love that thought. And the second piece is just how teams utilize players, because it's like that was probably my one question. How is Buffalo going to use this guy that looks good on film, that I really like watching, that all the signs are pointing to? And now they're answering that question. He is a big part of their passing game. And there's so much volume there. It's ridiculous in that Buffalo offense. Unlike a guy like Laviska Shenault, who's another one of those guys that my eyes are saying the same thing when I watched Laviska last year. The reports out of college was just health issues. He could have been a first-round pick. Like, he's got all the criteria. I'm watching him this year. He makes a catch. When they try to tackle him, the way he is breaking tackles, and has like a whole one catch, it goes for 58 yards, and then Urban Meyer does not want to find ways to get him the ball creatively. Just mind boggles me. So I'm a little bit frustrated, and, that's the end of my rant. JB, take it over.
Now, getting away from Laviska Shenault, I don't know how Dan managed to creep him into the conversation.
That was pretty good.
But he's talented like Knox. The film says this is a guy that should hit in fantasy football, but he's not being utilized. Knox is being utilized.
Wait, what was that F word you used?
Fantasy football?
Film? What is that?
Film? I love the film, JB. I love the film.
That's an F word I'm not familiar with.
Support with some analytics. What do you got for us in the analytic world there, JB?
Now, one thing that we're doing on the Patreon, I say I am doing this on the Patreon.
Yes. It's an analytic machine.
But it's a weekly usage report, and it's spitting out, we're looking at routes per drop back, the way they're lining up, slot, wide, in line, receiving yards per drop back, yards per out run, average depth of target, the way they're being deployed, a target share, different things like that, in one easy, quick way to find all this information. But I'm looking at this right now. Routes per drop back, 45% in week 1. He's been over 70% in every game since, 90% against the Chiefs there on Sunday night. But the thing that I really like, over the last 4 weeks, his slot percentage has increased week after week after week. 16% week 2, 34%, 43%, up over 50% against the Chiefs, the way he's being deployed in that offense. Now, the average depth of target, that was the big outlier here in week 5. I don't think we can expect 28.3 yards per pass attempt in the air, but something that was really nice to see outside of week 5, actually, even though it was a monster game, not only has his slot percentage increased, we've also seen an uptick in his target share with 8%, 9%, 11%, 23%, back to 15% in week 5. So going through all those numbers, the way that Dawson Knox has been used, it's what we want out of our tight ends. It's why people like Kyle Pitts so much. Well, yeah, he's a tight end, but not really. He's going to be doing this, that, and the other. Travis Kelce, last night, I said the way the Colts defend slot receivers, Mark Andrews was going to have a field day. I think what he did last night qualifies as a field day. But what we're seeing from these tight ends lining up in the slot, those are the money opportunities essentially. So for Dawson Knox, I think your price point is spot on. But what we're hoping for is that maybe not what he did in week 5 continues, but we continue to see those 4 or 5 targets a week. We've seen Stephon Diggs suffer a little bit. We've seen Cole Beasley completely disappear. I see in the chat, RIP Gabriel Davis, a sleeper and Cinderella that everybody wanted to believe in. But Dawson Knox has stolen that thunder. And I got to piggyback. I'll just throw it in here. I have Emmanuel Sanders on this list. And I know that's an easy cop out. And I kind of laughed when Mitch said it. I don't want to just say an old guy. Well, Emmanuel Sanders is that old guy that is giving you solid production. And he's been leading the wide receivers from a fantasy standpoint, something I do expect to continue. Let me rephrase that. I expect him to be heavily involved, not necessarily leading those wide receivers. So I'm not sitting here saying that Emmanuel Sanders is going to finish 2021 from a fantasy standpoint better than Stephon Diggs. But if he does, I'm going to go back and clip the first one before I corrected it. But yeah, 2 PPR for a tight end. I think if you're contending, a late first is probably right on target here. And we've talked about the strength of the 2022 class and what we're seeing here, especially in Superflex from these quarterbacks that are going to be rookies in 2022. So there's that concern. So do you move a late first if you think Dawson Knox can get 4, 5, 6 targets a game? he's getting used more than you said, TJ Hawkinson, after that big week 1. So I don't know. Dan, do you pay that price?
I think I start with a second in the player and just know in my back pocket if I could take the negotiation up to a late first and then maybe try to get like a second or a third back with Knox, because that first that could be an elite player. I don't know if Knox does not, I don't consider him an elite player. At least, we know what his upside is, but I think it's in the negotiation there. I think Mitch has just got to work his way there, and he knows he's got that as a tool, and ends up with a tight end that's going to put up a lot of points this year. And to Evan's comment in the chat there of RIP Gabriel Davis, I think for this year it is an RIP Gabriel Davis. I think it's Manny's turn. That offense is just operating differently, but he's still only 22, and he's still, he had a touchdown last week. He's still in the game plan and flashes now and then. So I wouldn't completely RIP him just for this year.
Yeah, and you got to be a little patient there. We would expect the departure of Emmanuel Sanders here after the season. Cole Beasley, who knows what's going on with him. But before we move on, Emmanuel Sanders, again, target share, he's hitting 15% pretty much every game. And we're talking about 5, 6, 7 targets and an average depth of target. He is the deep threat in that offense. 21, 18, 16, 14, 18 yards down the field. And Josh Allen, I know people were concerned, at least in years past prior to 2020, Josh Allen inaccurate. You can't really throw the deep ball. He's been okay. And Emmanuel Sanders has certainly been one of the main beneficiaries. So Emmanuel Sanders, somebody I'm targeting as a contender. Obviously, the longer term value, not necessarily there. But Dawson Knox, I mean, there's nothing really. It's not like somebody's injured. It's not like a Dalton Schultz situation with Michael Gallup coming back. I think we can expect Dawson Knox to continue that. So I like that one, Mitch. And again, it's somebody that can sustain longer term value as opposed to my boring Emmanuel Sanders. Dan, before I turn it over to you, I'll get my old guys out of the way. So Emmanuel Sanders, 2/3. I think you could acquire him there. AJ Green, you can get him for a third and maybe a fourth. Antonio Brown, he's been fantastic. I think he's going to cost you. I have a second and third, maybe. Yeah.
Agreed.
And then before he comes back, can I fire off 3 seconds for Michael Thomas if somebody's rebuilding?
Absolutely not.
You don't think so?
I think it'll cost more right now. I think
We're getting closer.
4 weeks ago you could have done it. Anyone who has him has been planning on using him. I have him on a lot of rosters right now.
What if you're 0-5 towards the bottom of the standings and points scored?
0-5? Well, 0-5. Okay, that's the exception. Maybe if I'm 0-5, but if I'm 2-4 going into week 7 when he comes back, I'll fire him up and hope I could go on a run.
Okay, but that's somebody else that I'm looking at here, especially with what we've seen out of that offense. Jameis Winston, he's been pretty solid. And we've seen 2 splash games from him. So Michael Thomas, I think he's going to garner and demand 30+% target share. And the thing with him is hopefully something doesn't happen. He comes back for a game and he's like, oh yeah, I'm sitting out the rest of the year. So, something crazy happens. But those are the 3 older guys, kind of went in declining order. Sanders, Brown. Is Brown older than Sanders? Sanders is older than Brown, I think.
Correct. Sanders is older. I don't know the exact age, but he's definitely older.
Okay. I hope so.
He's closer to the rocking chair. Brown just came off a hiatus, so it took a little momentum, and he feels older.
He's
and you
talk
about
hips.
And talk about Achilles. Mitch was all over Emmanuel Sanders coming off that Achilles, and he's been okay ever since then. All right, Dan, I kind of hijacked the show here for 24 minutes. Who do you got?
Hey, I like we're going in different angles. Mitch is zeroed in on a great target that he's identified. JB, you're looking at some older guys there. And when I got this homework assignment from you, I kind of just tiered it out a little bit based on, options that our listeners may have. Are they looking to get someone who is a little bit older that isn't quite that flashy, shiny toy? Are they looking for someone maybe it's got a little more youth to them, but could be a strong contributor now? Where do they fall? And, I think both of you mentioned at some point timing. I feel we missed the timing to a degree on Dawson Knox. You definitely gave it an angle, Mitch, to still go after him. That could work, but it's a little bit frustrating when you see a Dawson Knox or a Deebo Samuel and you think, man, there was a path to where they could have had a really good year. Not that I have some shares of Knox. I'm definitely light on Deebo Samuel, but I wish I had more. And I think timing is the key, and just reminder to listeners to be aggressive when they want to go after guys. Chase and Pitts, elite guys. There was little windows there maybe where you could have got them a little more fair value. Those windows have passed again. Chase is lighting it up. Pitts has had a great week. So some thoughts there. Now, the guys I have on this list, and again, we talk about timing. In the last, here we get enter week 6, there's been some guys that every week I take some notes, whether it's for Dynasty or DFS. I'm just keeping an eye on them. Chase Claypool and Mark Andrews are 2 guys that might have just missed the timing window. Mark Andrews definitely after that performance last night. But you got to tell me before last night, Andrews was still, he kind of lost some lust this season. Wow. Last night.
I think you're spot on there. In our Discord, especially in premium leagues, tight end premium, how many times did we hear, well, Mark Andrews doesn't really benefit from the premium as much as the other high-end receivers. But I think people just, the red zone utilization, that was a big thing that was missing. And that certainly was taken care of in last night's game. But yeah, that window, it is shut, boarded up, and then it's like in the movie The Purge, a metal sheet came down over it and it's not opening, it's locked, it's done. And Chase Claypool probably in a similar situation after what we saw from him last week, and then the Juju injury. I think that's critical. But yeah, Dan, timing, that's spot on. Timing is more than half the battle, I would say.
So those 2 I brought up because of time, and you couldn't have summed up Andrews any better. So I'll move forward. Guys you can obtain that I'm looking at. First, the non-shiny pennies here, Josh Jacobs and Nuke Hopkins. There's just something about him. I'm watching the Raiders this year now. That's a little bit, I feel even filthy saying Raiders right now as John Gruden's gone. And I put an asterisk with him because who knows what direction the Raiders are going in right now. But I only bring up Jacobs because he's a guy I was really hard on and down on and didn't like, and I had no desire for him. But in watching the Raiders, Drake's not in the game plan. And the only reason Peyton Barber was because Jacobs was hurt. And when Jacobs has been in there and that O-line is better than I thought it was going to be, and they still have some issues at the guard position a little bit. They're not all the way there, the O-line, but it's better than I thought it was going to be in the preseason. They're utilizing him in the pass game, in the run game. Like, he's their guy. Now, again, with John Gruden not there, does it stay the same? We'll have to kind of watch that a little bit. But he's just a guy that I think's still super young. How old is Jacobs? He's under 25.
23, I think.
I thought he's real young, man.
Super young.
So he's real young. He's getting utilized in a way that we didn't anticipate. And it's one of the reasons we didn't like him because of Drake. I think he could help a contender this year. And I think Hopkins is due for a blow-up game. I just think Arizona is doing really well. And if I want to contend this year, he just has missed that blow-up game week in and week out this year. They still distribute the ball a little more than I like, but I think they're 2 guys that could do really well. And Darrell Henderson's another guy I kind of just had. I think injuries have kind of taken some lust off him, but he's looking pretty decent. They want to utilize him. I'm not buying that Sony Michel extra carries this week at all. He's not even looked at in the passing game. So they're the non-shiny ones. Then I'm going to go back to the well with guys I liked. Zack Moss. He looked good this week. Well, I don't know. I'm going to give you. Can I go through my list first, or do you? All right, go ahead.
But I'm going to lose my train of thought. First of all, Darrell Henderson was actually on my list. Now in the offseason, I was saying I was moving him for first.
I like what we think alike.
That was the plan. And based on, I don't want to say what we saw from Marlon Mack in those 7 carries or 6 carries last night. Actually, 5 carries, but 5 carries, 40 plus yards, coming off that Achilles. Marlon Mack didn't look terrible last night.
That is
shocking. Wow.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
Which one?
What?
John said Marlon Mack, and then I think you said wow or something.
Oh, yeah,
you were heckling
I was
him,
just
right?
saying I was so shocked that someone could actually come off an Achilles tear and not be absolutely horrible. Like, it's a really weird thing. I thought, like, the running back position was this, like, mythical beast of, like, the only position in any sport that cannot come back. Olympic athletes can come back, no big deal. People can play basketball. Kevin Durant comes back and is awesome. But no, running backs, Emmanuel Sanders comes back and he's good at 35. Nope. Running backs cannot run in a straight line. Nope. Sorry. Can't happen. Sorry.
I feel a lot of sarcasm on that. I thought like you guys lost me on the stream or something. Mitch is just saying
Mitch is getting a point across.
But anyway, so my point there was, so maybe that gives some hope for Cam Akers next year. But, looking at Darrell Henderson for this year, at least 60% route participation every single week, with the exception of week 3 when he was out. Fantastic workload on the ground. I know, Dan, you just said you're not really buying into that Sony workload that we saw this week, and I tend to agree. Next 11 games, that runs through week 17. Hopefully you're in the championship. 9 of their opponents are the Giants, Lions, Texans, Titans, Packers, Jaguars, Seahawks, Vikings, Ravens. Those teams are in the bottom half of the league when you look at fantasy points given up to running backs. 9 of their 11 opponents. And I think they have the Cardinals and 49ers, who are a little bit stiffer competition defensively, at least in terms of their fantasy ranks up to this point. But Darrell Henderson, I'm right there with you. And then who else did you say? Because there was another one that light bulb kind of went off.
Henderson, I think, has that Akers role, and that's why he's really good this year. But the other guys was Josh Jacobs and DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, that's an interesting one. And it was yesterday or today I saw a thread on Twitter and a lot of people chiming in. I didn't realize people were so down on Hopkins. Like, is he having a fantastic start to the season? No. He's like wide receiver 16, 17. But again, we're looking at trends. We're looking at usage. And when it comes to DeAndre Hopkins in that Cardinals offense, week 2, 11% target share. Week 3, 15%. Week 4, 22%. Week 5, 29%. Am I saying this is going to continue and he's going to hit 100% by season's end? No. But if I can get him at a nice discount as a contender, I mean, the age cliff is there, you know, thinking that's going to come up here shortly with him. What is he, 29 years old? I'm still investing, and I did not realize people were so down on him. So I think that's a really good one to bring up.
And I think that's why they're down on him, JB, because they're looking at that age cliff. They're like, hey, we drafted this guy or held on to him because of his perceived first-round value, and he's not quite producing that. But as you mentioned, the volume of target share that he's getting, it's there. It's rising. I thought he was going to blow up this last week, and that's where I stacked him, and Kyler was all pumped about that stack. Even had Kadarius Toney and Tremble in the lineup. But what I didn't anticipate is the last 2 weeks, how well the 49ers defense has played. And it is just something you kind of could lose in the fantasy community sometimes. Like, I thought Russ and Metcalf were going to eat the week before in that Seattle offense, and they didn't either. It's just the Niners offense is struggling so much. So I think it's just a matter of time before he goes ham. And then I mentioned Zack Moss. Again, I'm going back to, here's a guy that just Buffalo really wanted to give him the ball a year ago, and he just couldn't stay healthy. So then we come into the season, we think he's the guy. There's still some Singletary truthers there. Singletary does okay in the beginning. Look how quick that flipped in Buffalo where they pumped Moss. And then if you watch that last game, Allen checked down to him 4 or 5 times. He caught it, looked spry, and was really getting a nice workload there. So I just think he's their guy in Buffalo. And if you need a back that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, you could acquire Zack Moss and he could stabilize you at running back or give you some depth in the contending when you have bye weeks coming up and we know the injuries are there. So I like him. Jacoby Myers is another one that I don't think costs an arm and a leg. New England's got to get some things together, but he's their guy. He's their slot guy. He's getting targets. He's overdue to find the end zone. There's got to be some positive regression in his future there, as he just has not found it. I think as they continue to get that O-line better and Mac Jones continues to progress, I think there's just some good volume for Myers that could help your team as well.
You mentioned Zack Moss this week, 15% target share. I mean, not that we would know this automatically, but when's the last time a running back in a Josh Allen-led offense saw 15%?
And he capitalized on it too. You know, it wasn't that game you're watching. It's like, all right, they finally threw it to him and then he dropped it or had a 1-yard gain. Like, he looked good.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point, and we talk about usage. I'm a big trends guy here, and it's tough for football because it really is a limited sample. You know, whether it's trying to find players in certain draft rounds with breakout age and college dominator. And then by the time you dwindle down, it's like, okay, there's 8 guys over the last decade. Is that enough to really get enough information from? And oftentimes the answer is no. And I try to preface things with that it is a limited sample. It's not like baseball where we're getting 162 games a year, hockey or basketball. So there's such a limited sample here. And we try to find trends and identify usage and the way players are utilized, because that is critical. And I was guilty of look at the way Singletary has looked these first few weeks. They really like him. Just like that, the Bills completely go, not entirely, but go to Moss for the most part. And we've seen this how many times across how many teams, just when you think Rondell Moore is really going to pop off for Arizona and get a ton of targets, kind of comes back down. Countless examples across the board. And that's what makes football, one, fantastic, but two, so freaking frustrating at the same time, especially for somebody like me who's trying to find those trends. And I'm throwing graphs out to the Discord every day. And Mitch is saying, JB, like, translate this for me. And there's times I'm like, I can't even, it just looks nice, Mitch. I don't know. What do you want from me?
There's some R number on there. I have no idea what it means. But here, so I only have 3 more guys I want to mention in this topic. And so the reason why I did them is because they're in variables of a second-round pick. One of them is a very early to a first-round pick, late first. The other one's going to be a mid-round, and the other one's going to be any second you could throw, you could get him. It's going to be James Robinson. He is going to be that first to second to where I think he's just going to get more and more work. The second one is Fournette. I mean, the Discord is raving about him. I mean,
That's a good one.
He is just going to get work. And the last one's James Robinson. All the dude does is score touchdowns.
Wasn't he your first one?
He is so excited about James Robinson.
You're really high on him.
So that's a decent excuse, right? At least they have the same first name. And so James Conner, I think you could get him for any second. But every single week, he can give you a touchdown. Like, I think prop bets on him, when you get that 0.5, you get, some plus money on that. That's a great bet I think you can make each week because they're not getting Edmonds the ball ever in the red zone. And so I think those are just 3 guys. And the reason why I picked them is because I think they're going to be valuable next year too. I'll admit, before the season, I said the whole Ronald Jones thing. That Ronald Jones ship has sailed. That thing's gone. But these 3 backs, I could see them being used next year. And that's why I don't mind giving up seconds for them. I don't mind giving 2 early seconds if I have to for James Robinson, because I think they're still going to get work next year. And those second-round picks, it could be someone for, like, I'm not going to even end up playing next year. And so I just think it's the proper move to make on a contender.
Mitch, I always, really quick, I always steal quotes from Mitch. And most of the time, I don't even think he remembers he said it, so I could probably just steal it and you would never know. But you said something, I think it was in the Discord, and you said that James Conner, you love this role for him. And it is a fantastic situation. Red zone utilization, inside the 5 opportunities. But he's not asked to put up 25, 30 carries a game. So durability, that concern, and again, injuries could happen any which way. But to minimize that risk a little bit and lowering his workload, working hand in hand with Chase Edmonds, who 2 weeks ago I said, go out and get him for 2 seconds. He's on my list again. I'm still trying to get him for 2 seconds, or Damian Harris in a second. But that backfield, I like what they're doing and the way they're being utilized. Outside of Jonathan Taylor, James Conner and Nick Chubb each have 6 carries inside the 5. That is the second most across the running back position. And those are high value touches. I was looking at it. Carries inside the 5 are 4 times as valuable as carries elsewhere on the field. I think it was like 0.5 versus 2 points. So it's pretty significant. So if you're getting those touches inside the 5, that's a great opportunity for James Conner. So I think, and the Leonard Fournette, that was a fantastic one too. And I hate that we're agreeing on all of these. I really don't want to. I wish I could say, oh, that sucks. That's awful.
My head is going to sleep on the pillow tonight so well with all the compliments of Kadarius Toney and Leonard Fournette. I'm basking right now. I'm glowing, man. I'm glowing. But Mitch's guys are really interesting. And when you look at James Conner, Leonard Fournette, and then I mentioned Zack Moss before, there's like the common denominator in all 3 of them is those offenses are awesome. You got a Josh Allen-led Bills team. You got, the GOAT Brady. You got Kyler. They're all healthy. They got good O-lines. They're contenders. And those 3 guys just established themselves. And O'Connor's doing that with Chase. So you got to temper it a little bit. There's going to be some games that are not going to – the game script might not quite ebb and flow your way. But more often than not, they're going to help you. And it's the same thing with Lenny, too. every once in a while, Brady gets super greedy and just doesn't want to throw the ball here. You guys are laughing. Like that. Oh, Ingram's another frustrating guy there. Don't get me going on Ingram. Probably half our listeners too. But good list there, Mitch, man. And James Robinson, JB is the other one that's just kind of that Mitch mentioned. Just Jacksonville. That's the only like frustrating, weird thing. Like, but for this year, I think it's solid. He keeps proving everybody wrong. I just don't know what the heck's going to happen with that coaching situation.
I'm on, like, again, this goes back to like Darrell Henderson and the price point we were putting on James Robinson. If I could cash out, at this point now, if you're a contender and you're relying on James Robinson, we're going into week 6. I'm not just going to ship him off because I would like to win that championship. And I think James Robinson presents that opportunity with the workload that he's getting.
He'll probably JB, he'll be back next year. It's just a matter of and ETN will be back in the conversation. But Lenny and Connor, they could be out. Both of them are on 1-year deals. So,
right.
Next year is an interesting factor. Sorry to interrupt you, man.
No, but I think for Fournette and James Robinson, like, I'll pay a mid-second next year and a late second if I have to. What's the hit rate on those, especially in next year's class?
Yeah,
I'll take the points this year. And James Robinson and Leonard Fournette, guys that we could at least get flex appeal from moving forward. And then James Conner, 2 weeks ago, I said, somebody jumped in one of our league chats and they said, James Conner for any second. And they even called me out in our Discord. They said, JV, I heard you talk about this. And not that I scoffed at it, but I said, I didn't even consider it. If I'm a contender, and I think that's 208, 209, 210.
Yeah.
I'll move that.
Free flex play.
That's 2 weeks. It's okay to change your values and change your opinion. And from what we've seen from James Conner, I think he solidifies that role. Now, if I go out and acquire him in multiple shares, he's probably going to miss a few games with an injury. That's just how it works, right? All right, I'm going to rattle through my list very quickly. I have 4 quarterbacks. All 4 of these quarterbacks depress value for one reason or another. And then when you look at it from week 6 to week 14, the regular season in your fantasy leagues, they fall in the top 6 easiest schedules in terms of defensive pass efficiency. Mitch, you and I were talking about Sharp Football Stats earlier today. It is a free resource. I get a ton of information. Mitch, you turned me on to it. And now I think it's like my homepage whenever I log on to the internet. I'm on there so much. But the quarterbacks I'm looking at, depress value, like I said, and I think they have potential to really take off as the season goes on with their schedules. Tua, he's returning from IR. And Dan, I know you're a Tua guy. I think some of the sizzle has fallen off there on Tua. Despite last night's game, a lot of people still hate Carson Wentz. That's an easy schedule coming up. Now the concern with him,
he could be injured at any second. Like
the injuries,
can wake up injured.
The way he crumbled in 2020, and then also strategy-wise, what if the Colts are like, we're out of contention. We don't want the Eagles to have our first round pick.
Happen. Yep.
We don't want to play him 70% of the snaps. You talk about spite. You talk about strategy. That could be it right there. But let's say I had Russell Wilson, and I'm missing him for multiple weeks. Carson Wentz for my late first. That's kind of the threshold. Situations I would move Wentz for a first. I might buy for a late first as well if I need to. And then Jameis Winston, I don't think he's far off from Carson Wentz in terms of value. We've seen 2 tremendous splash games. He's getting his most important weapon back in Michael Thomas, hopefully in 2 weeks. Alvin Kamara still being utilized. Hopefully there's a little bit more volume in that passing attack. But Jameis Winston, I think the question marks with him is, what are we going to see beyond 2021? And is he going to be a starter? I think Jameis has played pretty damn well this year compared to what people were expecting. I think people were kind of secretly hoping for a dumpster fire there. He's been taking care of the ball. He's been okay. And then the last one, and guys, this is disgusting. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say it. Based on schedule, okay? I don't even know if it would cost you a late second. And this isn't me being a homer.
Oh, no.
Ben Roethlisberger. I'm telling
Nope.
you,
I'm out.
I'm telling you for the price, just you're in a tough quarterback situation. I got him for 2/3 in one league. I got him for 2/3, and at that price, yes, sign me up. Again, I know it's disgusting. Last time I said something was disgusting, it was Brandon Bolden, who now everybody and their freaking mothers write a waiver article. Pick Brandon Bolden up. He's the PPR guy in New England over on fantasy sleepers.html. Whatever. Listen, it's gross. I know, but the schedule, it is going to be one of the easier schedules in the league throughout that period. And I think Ben could surprise some people and give you some solid production.
I was one of those critics hard on Am Bolden. So I'm going to give you Ben, even though, I threw up in my mouth a little bit there. I'm going to give you I know where you're going with it.
And then I have Chase Edmonds, running back. I talked about my old decrepit receivers. This isn't even as a contender, and it's not just because I had him as my running back 2 in this class, but Javonte Williams, if you want to acquire him at a decent price, now is the time.
Sure.
You look at that schedule. We talk about defensive rush efficiency. Mitch, I'm sure you saw this already.
Yep.
Denver has the easiest schedule, bar none. So Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, I think they're both there to provide some, it might be 10, 11, 12 points, but with injuries, bye weeks, that is certainly enough in many situations. So we talk about price points. I talked about Edmonds. I think I could get him for 2 seconds still. I could get him for Damian Harris in a second, something like that. Javonte Williams, if I'm a contender, I would move 2 projected later first for him. I really would. I think he is going to catapult up dynasty rankings. Evan in the chat, I threw up in my mouth when you said Ben Roethlisberger. I'm sorry. Hopefully you were able to make it to a garbage can at least, man. I apologize. Never want our listeners to get sick while listening to the show. But Javonte Williams, contender, middle of the pack. He's a guy that if you want him, get him now before the season progresses. All right, guys. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Anybody else you want to throw? Contender, just a name that you're dropping there for our listeners?
AJ Dillon. I know everybody loves Pollard. AJ Dillon is the guy to where you watch those games. I don't even know if it's showing up in your stats yet, JB, but they're using him. I mean, you turn on the game and he's just in there just a little bit more and more each game. And he's just a guy to where if anything happens to, I want to say Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler is not his name. Aaron Jones. So
what was right? That?
I don't know. They're both great at catching the ball. I don't know. But
wait, was that Austin Eckler? PPR running back 2? Austin Eckler? Is that who that was?
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Someone told me about him. I'm not entirely sure who it was. But if Aaron Jones gets injured at all, I mean, Dillon turns into what? A top 6 back? Probably. Top 8 at the worst. And I mean, now you could get him for, I'm sure you could get him for a second. I mean, and if someone's going to ask for a first, like, that's just like, no, I'm not doing that. But if you could get him for a second, he's just some of the backups in the league to where like the player goes down in front of him and you're like, just like Dan said, I should have been a week early. But, it's the risk you got to. That's why he was really, really low on my list. He's like, should I bring him up? But, I actually like him more than Pollard, to be honest with you, if I'm going to go out and get someone. Just the price difference.
I don't know if there really is a price difference, though. That would be interesting to me. Like, I know if you ask random people or throw a poll on Twitter, it's going to be one way. But when you talk to the manager that has either Pollard or AJ Dillon on their respective roster, I don't know if there is much of a difference. But you said you don't know if it's showing up in the usage. It is. Running back market share, he hit 50% 2 weeks ago, 36% this week, 10% target share. Where are these targets coming from? And I was one of the first people in line bashing him for his PPR and receiving upside because I didn't think it was there. Now, is he out there getting 30% target share? No, but that was one of the reasons that I really like Kylan Hill because I thought he was going to get used in the passing game. But A.J. Dillon, he hit a 10% target share last week. He's sitting at 7-10. Again, it's like, but still over 30 targets on pace for that. For A.J. Dillon, we didn't have that in our projections. I can tell you that.
Oh, no, there's no way.
Now, again, I'm not saying he's a PPR back. He's not going to be like my man Chase Edmonds getting 5, 6, 7, 8 targets every single week. But A.J. Dillon, it's just that tremendous upside. But I still do think Tony Pollard has more standalone value. And I don't even want to ask Dan what his thoughts are on that.
Yeah, man. No, I'm not even going to go there. I'll throw one for the road here and just at the tight end position. And believe it or not, it's not Tommy Tremble as much as I want to, but just a little disclaimer on Tommy Tremble, who I do like his long-term for Dynasty, and I'm happy I got those shares, but he's getting only a low percentage of the routes run on the team's passing plays, and his touchdown was on a broken coverage. I mean, he was just wide open. So like him, but if you're looking to contend this year, he's not your guy. But
you heard it here first. Tommy Tremble is not your target. I mean, really, he's not anybody's targets, especially Sam Darnold.
Oh, I want him on every roster. He should be getting more targets. It's just not his time yet. He's still developing. But Dan Arnold, man, this is another one of those Bolden type takes here. It's bottom of the ocean guys. But the Jaguars wide receiver situation is so bad. They purposely trade for him at tight end, and 6 catches for 64 yards. He's gonna have a role. They just. That's his strength. He's a receiving tight end, and that's an offense that he fits in right now. So if you're looking for some volume at a low price, I'd go with Danny Arnold.
And you talk about Jacksonville, and I guess this could be my final thought, but here, let's
final thoughts.
You look at Jacksonville, and I'm going to jump the gun here on a final thought. Are there any more people out there with those hot takes? Trevor Lawrence isn't their quarterback one in this class.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't know. I've been pleasantly surprised. You talk about dysfunction. You talk about things falling apart. He seems like he has a really good demeanor out there. And Dan, you might be able to look at that more and speak to it from a playing perspective, but it doesn't seem like he's ever too high or too low in a situation where it'd be very easy to get too low. But I just wanted to mention him because you talk about Dan Arnold and after his first full week at practice in Jacksonville to put up 8 targets, 2 PPR leagues, 1.5, 1.7, 2 tight ends. Dan Arnold could be somebody, and he could be had at a reasonable price. But if you were hoping that Robert Tonyan was going to carry you again this year, Evan Ingram, this, that, or the other, it could be somebody as simple as a Dan Arnold to get you 12 to 16 points in a tight end premium league that's going to help push you towards that title. And I think that's a really good name, Dan. But all right, now that I hijacked the final thoughts, Dan, what do you have for our listeners?
I'll give you a twofer on the final thoughts. One's a continuation of your thought on the tight end position. And when we're watching these teams, we talked about earlier in the show, how guys are being used is the key. Again, their talent may be there, but you really want to be mindful of the situation. At the tight end position, some guys that we did like, Bobby Tonyan, Jonnu Smith, they're blocking a little bit more, helping some O-line situations than we like. And it's good to be aware of that. Like Jonnu is helping protect more than he has to. And then they're utilizing Henry, as sometimes more as the receiving tight end. So, hey, will the situations change a year from now? Who knows? But be mindful of that tight end situation, especially at that position specifically when the O-lines have injuries or they're having issues there. That receiving tight end often doesn't become a receiving tight end to get the volume that we need. And then my original final thought was just keep grinding. Don't panic here. I'm seeing the group me chats and Patreon chats. Sometimes people panicking, fire sales after 5 weeks, even when they have a winning record. Just take it easy. Take it easy there. All right. There's still a lot of games to be played. Really look at what's going on with your roster over those first 5 weeks. Is it an injury issue? Was it a talent issue? Did some things just, you lost some real close games? Hang in a little bit longer. Keep working the free agent wire tonight. We've give you a lot of trade advice that you could capitalize on tonight. Work the trades and just stay active in your leads and try to get an edge. And hopefully Lady Luck turns your way in the next few weeks.
Mitch, before we turn to you, we have a question here. Left field question of the week in the chat here from Bars in the Tuck. My league gets full PPR, gives points for return yards. Should I pick up Jamal Agnew since he's getting targets now? And then the Jags D to double up if he gets a return touchdown. I had to look this up, but Jamal Agnew, even Byron Pringle, Deontay Harris, Khalil Herbert involved in the kickoff return game. Devin Duvernay, Demetric Felton, Chester Rogers. Those
Jamal
are guys
Agnew is the best returner in the league.
yeah, we saw
think
back-to-back touchdowns, right?
Easily is. The one thing against it is I want to play defenses that are going to get me sacks and they're going to get me turnovers to pair with that. I don't believe the Jags D will ever give you that. So I think while you do get the chance to get that double upside, the chances of it happening are so low in the first place, even for good defenses, that there's just no way that I'm going to start the Jags just to hope for an Agnew touchdown. So, I could double stack that.
I love that list JB ran through there. Deontay Harris and Devin Duvernay would be my targets because they are electric returners as well, but they have not prominent, but they have a role carved out where they will, I think, consistently for the rest of the year get catches in the offense, where Jacksonville's really funny. I mean, they're playing everybody under the sun there. Like, they're scripting plays for Tavon Austin and all these guys that I have no clue why they're doing it because they don't have half the talent of Chenault and even Marvin Jones, but who knows? When
I woke up this morning, I didn't think we were going to have a question tonight about points for return yards, but you got to keep us on our toes. And I like that question. Luckily I was able to find a resource to drop those return stats very quickly. And then question in the chat from Evan, 12 team Superflex PPR 2.01 or Allen Robinson. This is Allen Robinson for me.
Yeah, it's Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson.
It's Robinson, but I'm very frustrated and I would temper your expectations what you're going to get out of him this year, but for that value, yes.
I mean, he's no Hollywood Brown, that's for sure.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Anybody that listened to Dynasty Theory, was that last summer? 2020?
Yep.
It was 2020. Dan and I had, Dan was cool and collected like Trevor Lawrence. I was rattled like Kadarius Toney, if you will. And we got into a discussion about Allen Robinson and Hollywood Brown and Mitch. That was a good one. I like that. Okay. Anyway, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Follow the show on Twitter at Dynasty Theory FF. And if you enjoy the show, if you want to show your support, check out the Patreon, $5 a month. Like I said, we have the constantly updated Dynasty tiers. I have my usage report I'm throwing out in season every single week. I have that out by Tuesday at the latest to get you prepared for the next week. And then we have our annual projections during the off season. We have some virtual happy hours, which have been a lot of fun. We have our next one scheduled for a couple Thursdays from now for the Packers and Cardinals, I believe, but a lot of good things going on over there. And then if you're just looking for the Discord community, reach out to one of us. And we'll be more than happy to send you the link. For Dan Lamagna, Mitch Sorensen, I am John Bauer. Hopefully everybody has a fantastic week 6. We'll catch you next week. Peace.